Hi, I'm Mike Richter, and today we're going to talk about how I saved $3,300 with one document. So basically, I'm talking about property taxes today. Property taxes are one of the most sore subjects in my background, just because there's one thing that I really dislike about property taxes, and that's even if I pay off my property and the property is mine, every single year I'm going to owe property taxes, and that never goes away. And if for whatever reason my heirs forget to pay property taxes, they could lose the property that I worked so hard to acquire in the first place. So let's go over a quick overview. First, I'll explain what property taxes are, what they go to, and kind of a little bit of what you can do about it. The second point, I'll talk to you about my property tax story where I used this one document to save $3,300. And finally, I'll wrap up with different ways you could use to contest your property taxes if you've been assessed way too high. All right, let's get started. So property taxes are collected for local government. And basically, in my neck of the woods, the property taxes are collected to pay for city and county government as well as public schooling. Those are the three separate and distinct different tax levies that show up on my property tax statement. Now, where I live, city government is funded almost entirely by property taxes and by sales taxes. And in recent years, my taxes have gone up significantly on each of my properties here. We had an oil boom throughout most of 2013, lasting into 2014, which really escalated property sales prices quite a bit. Now, in my state, usually if tax values go up, then the corresponding tax rate associated with it goes down. However, in my case and in the case of most of my friends that are investors here, we ended up feeling, yes, a lowering of the overall tax rate, but then they would hike our tax value up so much that it was just insane. There was no way to justify that based on any kind of numbers that you can find in the market. But one word of hope is that just because a taxing authority reassesses your value does not mean that it's the final word. And I'll get into talking about that when I talk about my story. So I bought my house that I live in right now in 2015, at the late part of 2015. I bought it at about $80,000 under its asking price. And in 2016, they reassessed my property. And based on what they reassessed my property to, it was well over $20,000 more than the original asking price for the property. And the corresponding taxes that they were asking me to pay was $9,500. That's crazy. So I offered to sell the county my house for the tax value that they set, because I had bought it for significantly less than that. I said, hey, look, I'll sell it to you today for that amount of money, because there's no way that the house appreciated this much since I purchased it less than 5 months ago. And they were like, yeah, that doesn't make any sense either. And they asked me to give them a copy of my closing statement. Boom. And they changed my tax value immediately. So instead of having to pay $9,500 in taxes, I only paid $6,200 in taxes. That saved me $3,300 year over year, which, I mean, who doesn't want to have $3,300 extra in their pocket to do whatever you want to do with it? I mean, that made Christmas a little better for my kids, I guess, just because we were able to enjoy more time in Los Angeles that year. Now, that's just one way to contest value with a closing statement if you've got a recent sale that was below the tax value. It worked out really well for me, and it works out well for me for properties that I buy significantly below market value, because I can simply take the closing statement into the tax appraisal district and say, hey, can you tax me on this value because this is what I purchased it for. And one of the most appropriate ways to calculate value for real estate is whatever a buyer is willing to pay and a seller is willing to sell it for in an arm's length transaction. Now, what arm's length means for taxation purposes is I'm not selling or buying from a family member or a close associate, but it's somebody that I have no relationship with, and that's considered an arm's length transaction. Another way that you can test value is through a real estate broker opinion. So basically what they do is they run comparable sales in your market and provide that as evidence as far as what your property is worth, if it is worth less than the taxable value. And if that's the case, then that's a great way to go about it, especially in markets where, say, you had a superheating of a market like we did in 2013 and 2014 with the oil field causing a lot of house prices to spike as high as they did. And most broker opinions will be a set fee associated with that, and whether or not their comp pulling actually helps you getting your taxes down, you're still expected to pay the broker for their time. Now that brings us to the next way to contest value. Is there a lot of law offices out there that specialize in contesting property taxes? And this is a service I'm looking into for this upcoming tax year, just because in my state there are a lot of lawyers that are willing to reassess a bulk of properties and contest your taxes, and you pay half of the amount that they got to reduce your tax by. So for instance, if I was paying a total of $40,000 in property taxes across my properties, and the lawyers were able to make it so that I'm only paying $20,000 on property taxes for my properties, then they saved me a grand total of $20,000. And I would be expected to pay them $10,000, which is all fine and dandy, because once all of my properties escrows come up, I'll be refunded that extra $10,000. So I would get that $20,000 as a refund. The unfortunate thing is I would have to pay up front for that service and then get paid back on the back end. But you can structure that in various ways with different law offices. It's just a matter of negotiation and what you're willing to come to terms with. And another way to contest your value is you could simply ask your local assessor and see if there's an alternate way to calculate taxable value. Here where I live, there is the comparable sales approach to valuation, and there's also the income property valuation that you can go with. So you choose which one is most advantageous for you and go with that one. It just so happened that all of my income properties generate more cash or more gross rents than they would compare in the comparable sales model evaluation. So it's advantageous for most of mine to go through the comparable sales way of valuing property. So just to recap, property taxes are used for essential services and to fund city and county governments for the most part, and to fund schools. Your property taxes might go to other things, but that's just what it does in my neck of the woods. Property taxes are a cost that will always exist as long as you own property, and that's just one of those fact of life kind of deals. Even if you pay off the mortgage, you're still going to be responsible for property taxes. I also told you my property tax story where I bought a property at a really good deal. Then the next year, the appraisal district decided to try to collect more taxes on my property. I showed them my closing statement, and they said, "Oh, our bad. Here's your new tax rate." And I saved $3,300. And then we also talked about different ways you can contest your property taxes. Either if you had a screaming good deal when you purchased your property, you can show them your closing statement, and that would be one way to get your property taxes reassessed. You can go to a real estate broker and get a broker's opinion or a comparable sales analysis and take it to the appraisal district. Or you can hire a law office that specializes in contesting property taxes. That's definitely something I'm looking into in the future. And finally, there may be alternate approaches for your real estate to be assessed, and find a way that is most advantageous to you and your circumstances. So if you felt that this was valuable, by all means go ahead and give it a thumbs up. If you'd like to hear more from me and more content, by all means, go ahead and hit the subscribe button. And also, if you hit the little bell icon next to the subscribe button, that's the notification button. And what you can do is by clicking on that, you can get notified of any new activity on my channel. And finally, if there's anybody that you know that might be able to benefit from this content, by all means, go ahead and share freely. I'd really appreciate that. And if you've got any questions or any stories of your own, I'd love to hear them in the comment section down below. Thank you so much for your time. Have a great day.